Spotlighted. Okay. Um, Good morning, everyone, and good evening. Um, Welcome to the program. Cantor Young could not be here because she's teaching this morning, but she did an introduction for us. And Jody, who is our technical wizard today, thankfully, is going to play it for us now.
Havat Marpeh, the healing space Rishbon, is a groundbreaking response to the mental and emotional trauma inflicted on Israel by the October 7th tragedy and subsequent war. Founded in the immediate aftermath of the massacre, Healing Space recognizes both the ongoing nature of the trauma and its ripple effect throughout Israeli society. Utilizing a holistic approach, Healing Space works to repair the mind-body connection ruptured by trauma and to build resilience. Havat Marpeh's professional team works with numerous communities, exposing them to various treatment modalities, all at a beautiful outdoor site. From its inception for survivors of the Re'im festivals, Healing Space has grown to encompass bereaved families, survivors' parents, young adults displaced from the Gaza envelope, medical teams, IDF special forces coping with traumatic loss, soldiers rotating out of Gaza, and those readjusting to civilian life.
This program comes about because when Cantor Young and her group were in Israel, they visited the healing space, and Natalie was so impressed with it and talked to me about it, and then put me in touch with Ilana, who I'm about to introduce and turn the program over to her. Dr. Ilana Kwartin is the key founder and CEO of the Healing Space. She is also, and I could go on for about 20 minutes because I looked up your credentials, but I'll try to summarize all this. An experienced attorney, inspirational speaker, feminist activist, legislative advisor, author, entrepreneur, Zumba teacher, and the mother of four. Ilana, welcome.
Thank you. I'll just correct you and say I'm not the founder. Many people founded the Healing Space. I came as CEO, but thank you. Okay, so should I start with the return the presentation? We'll be able to
Whatever
see it?
you'd like. This is your show.
Okay, let me see. I'll open it up so it will be more clear. Okay. And there'll be time for questions, I guess, and elaborations. So
Let me just mention that the chat will only come to me, and at the end, I will look to the chat for questions and comments first.
okay, and you can stop me in the middle if there's something that comes as a clarification or something like that. Okay, so hi, my name is Dr. Ilana Kwartin, so I'm the CEO of Healing Space. I came around right after October 7th when the place was founded, and in a minute you'll see how it was founded and why. And you spoke about my my past, and it's very true. So it's all here in logos. I am a lawyer. I specialize in women's rights, a Zumba instructor, entrepreneur, an author. Everything is true. And a mother of four. My four children are here on the screen. Tamara, Yoav, Ivri, and Arava are their names. I'll say also that I live in the southern periphery of Israel, between Kiryat Gat and Be'er Sheva, and we live very close to the border with Judea and Samaria. And when October 7th started, we are, in a sense, the second line of infiltration. So if the Gaza envelope is the first line of infiltration, we are the second line. So hearing from everything that's happening in the kibbutzim and the moshevim in the Gaza envelope, we started guarding our community, hiding in our homes, bringing the guns from the gun room, and acting as if we're next. And I'll say also that from that point on, for about 2 months, we were guarding our community. Most of the grown-ups in the community went on reserve duty, so we had less grown-ups and hundreds of children to take care of. And it was a huge time of uncertainty. 25 years ago, when I was in the army and in the IDF, I actually served as a tatzpitanit on an observation post in Nachal Oz. Nachal Oz that you hear about, the girls who came back home from captivity in Gaza yesterday were kidnapped from Nachal Oz, where I served. So to say that this war is personal for me is an understatement. But I definitely was looking to see what I can do for my country, what I can do for the rehabilitation of my people, how I can be part of the effort and not just do what I did up until that point, which was, lawyering and women's rights and everything else. And my journey is very similar to a lot of Israelis who have changed their professions, have changed their course of life because of what happened on October 7th. There's everything before that date and everything after. So I guess it's very important to say that even us who are responding to it, or the civil society, or all of the organizations, we all are here because we want to be part of this and because we've changed everything we've done so far. So we haven't done this before. This is, Healing Space didn't exist before. So I'll start with October 7th. In Israel, we write our dates the other way around. So I guess you would write it the other way. But also I'll say that I think in America, it was actually October 6th because 6 a.m., right? How many hours apart are we? 8 hours? 8 hours apart? Yeah. So yeah, it was actually Friday night for you. It was actually October 6th. The worst thing in the history of Israel, I think, in modern time happened. And you all know what happened at 6/29. We started receiving notice of missile attacks, infiltration, and massacres, and something that we didn't know the magnitude of. The direct victims, the direct survivors are still, but will have to deal with what's broken for decades to come. It's not something that will be repaired easily. And again, we are in those days of people coming back from Gaza, from captivity. There are no words to describe what those people, what the survivors have been through and are going through. Around the survivors, there's a huge group, which we call responders. Not many organizations have reacted to the need of the responders. And there's a variety of people. We estimate more than 500,000 people who belong to that group, and they're divided into various groups. It's the reserve soldiers. Again, I don't know if you know, but about 400,000 soldiers have been recruited at this war that became 4 fronts: Gaza, Lebanon, Judea and Samaria, and Yemen. So the 4 fronts are handled by 400,000 reserve duty soldiers on top of what the IDF military has in terms of personnel, and they are the responders. That one morning, they were sent to the front, you know, from their lives, from their normal lives, from their jobs to do this. And most of them have been doing it for 450 days now, more than a year. Police officers who also responded to the crisis. In a sense, there are 40,000 police officers in Israel. They all left what they were doing, and they're responding to the war. Doctors or physicians are responding to the people who are injured, the people who come back from Gaza and need checkups and need tending to. We're talking about therapists who treat the many people who are experiencing traumatic symptoms, and people who have had diagnoses who are now have been worse since the start of the war. The therapists. Educators who have to teach children under such circumstances. And I'm sure you can imagine what anxiety and depression rates are doing in Israel in terms of children in schools and how educators are supposed to react to that. Even reporters and journalists who have been covering the news of this war from the get-go and have been showing pictures of massacres, of blood, of the most horrific things. And of course, social workers who are tending to the families. Sometimes it's the families who had people kidnapped and things like that. These are the responders. If you'd ask them, how you doing? How you feeling? They'll say, don't worry. I'm okay. I'm strong.
Excuse me,
I'm here.
Ilana,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
screen is not advancing. I don't know if it's supposed to.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it's not, it hasn't been?
No.
Okay.
No.
Hold on.
Jody,
Yes, I'm here.
the screen is not advancing, so you may have to do this, take us through the screen a little, because it doesn't seem to be
Do you
advancing.
see, tell me if it's advancing right now.
Yes,
It
It
is?
is.
Okay,
You
good.
might just have to click on it.
okay.
Okay, so let me go back for a second. I don't know what you haven't seen. I started here and you saw this?
No,
You
so
saw-
start right here.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I was talking about the survivors, the victims of October 7th, the direct ones, right? The ones who survived the parties in the South and then the infiltrations in the kibbutzim. You still see my screen moving or no?
Yes, it's fine now.
Okay, great. So I said that around them, there's a huge group of responders that are estimated in more than 500,000 people and that belong to various groups that I've listed. So they're here on your screen. You can see the list of responders. You can still see it, right? Okay, great. So if you ask the responders, how you doing? They'll say, don't worry, I'm okay. I'm strong. I'm doing okay. You know, I'm here for the wounded. I'm here for their families. I'm here to treat people. I'm doing okay. I'm feeling fine. They'll say, I'm here so you can keep on living. I'm guarding you. I'm keeping you safe, but I'm doing okay. I'm fine. That's what they'll tell you. But we all know that they're not okay and they're not fine. And we are now, this is January, so we're talking about 15 months of this. This is ongoing and it hasn't ended yet. And you can't really talk about PTSD because there's not post anything, but you can talk about vicarious trauma. So vicarious trauma is a term that actually was coined a psychiatrist that was dealing actually with the Vietnam veterans in America more than 30 years ago. And he talked about the emotional toll that service providers or responders or caregivers have because they are working with trauma survivors, and that they have a greater risk to develop PTSD symptoms later on. I'll try to, I guess, explain what it means in terms of graphics. So if up until October 7th, if you're a responder, if you're a therapist, if you're a social worker, if you're a psychiatrist, you're dealing with people who have trauma, and the trauma touches you, but then you can shake it off, right? You can shake off the trauma because you can go to therapy yourself, you can exercise, you go to someone who guides you, helps you out, and things like that. But after October 7th, all of these responders and many citizens in Israel are experiencing the fact that this trauma is touching us like radiation almost, and it's coming from everywhere you go. So it's in your job, in your profession, in your day-to-day life at work. It's where you live. If you're close to the border and you hear sirens daily, it's with your children who are going to school but are feeling more depressed. It's hearing the news every hour that another soldier has died, or that Hamas are not keeping their agreement, or whatever it is that you hear on the news, but you're living in it so close and so deep and so tight that the way that trauma touches you, like radiation, is not something you can just shake off. And I'll add to it that the mental health system in Israel has been collapsing even before October 7th. And of course, after October 7th, in a sense, this system said, we can't deal with this. This is a collective trauma. We are not equipped to deal with it in terms of personnel. We're giving up, in a sense. Okay, that's exactly what the system is saying. And so we at Healing Space, before the place started, the question was, how do you deal with the fact that there are so many people who you need to first screen to understand who needs deeper care, who needs a more superficial care, who needs certain type of care, right? From the responders. How do you deal with such numbers when you are in a war, when you're during a crisis, when missiles are falling on us, when the news is ongoing, when 500,000 people are on reserve duty and not part of the effort, when there are not enough psychiatrists, when there are not enough hospitals? How do you deal with this, right? Just in terms of numbers and the fact that this is the reality we're in. So that's the story behind Healing Space. So Healing Space is home for trauma healing in routine and emergency. It started on October 7th, so obviously on emergency, but it's ongoing even today and will go on for the next few decades. The picture that you're seeing on your screen that I hope that you're seeing is actually what Healing Space looks like. So it's half a farm, half a forest, filled with herbs and plants growing. It's very green on purpose. Okay, you come to nature. The setting is nature, and it's part of the way we treat at Healing Space. So Healing Space was established literally between 7th and 8th of October as a response. And like you said in the introduction, it actually started with the Nova survivors. I'll just say, I guess, something very important in terms of history, but there were 3 parties at the same time on October 6th, like the day before it all started. 3 parties. One of them, the Nova party, is the biggest one. It had almost 4,000 participants, but there were 2 more parties with 500 to 1,000 participants since each. So we are talking about actually 3 party participants. So we're talking about the festivities in the southern periphery. And the people who attend those parties are between 18 and 81, if you can imagine, in terms of demographics. The idea is that it's a nature party. Everyone is welcome. You know, if you buy a ticket, you can go. So demographics in terms of age, but also in terms of where you live around the country. We have north and south and center and rural living and urban living. We have people with kids and grandkids. We have people who are just young before the army. We have people who are Orthodox, people who are secular. You have everything. All stripes of society went to those parties. So Healing Space started with treating those people who were numb, who couldn't speak, who couldn't describe their experiences, who couldn't move some of their limbs because of paralysis, because it was so somatic, who came to just receive help in terms of someone who's just seeing them. That's how it all started. It then developed what you see on the screen, which is many responders and more circles of trauma that have been around the Nova survivors, around the people who survived the massacres and the kibbutzim, around bereaved families, around more and more circles who belong to this war, who were hurt by this war. Okay, so in terms of number, in the year of 2024, we've seen almost 16,000 people. And that's why I said in the beginning that we are the largest trauma healing center in Israel. There are other centers, there are other forms of healing that are practiced. There are farms and there are forests and there are groups and there are individual therapy. All of this is still happening in Israel, but we are the largest center and also the one that treats the biggest variety of populations. So we still have the festival survivors. We have bereaved families who come for group sessions almost every Friday. We have police officers and army soldiers. We're starting to have firefighters and other responders that belong to other offices and government offices. We have physicians and caregivers and social workers and therapists that come, and they all amount to these huge numbers, and it's still ongoing, and we expect the same in 2025. We employ more than 140 therapists. The therapists that we employed are professionals in 16 different modalities. The idea at Healing Space is that through mind-body connection modalities, we can reach the deepest symptoms, alleviate them, air the trauma, and help people gain strength and resilience to continue their job as responders, to continue their lives as a bereaved family, and so on. We have counted back that because we're working we're working every day with a group of 80 to 100 people, yes? So in terms of hours that we've accumulated in experience, we're talking about more than 60,000 hours of treatment that we've accumulated. So if every person who's a therapist would think how many hours they've treated in their clinic, they're not going to reach that number in years or in decades. So in one condensed year, we were able to reach to such experience that we know what triggers people, we know what helps people, we know what creates the largest impact, we know what works on different populations because of this experience. Some of the modalities that we use at Healing Space are yoga therapy. Yoga comes in terms of regaining the movement. A lot of the people who are experiencing traumatic response is because their body is frozen in a fight or flight reaction in a high tonus all the time. So part of yoga is just to regain movement and to talk about breathing and psychoeducation and knowing your body from the deeper levels of your body. So that's why yoga. We have therapeutic touch, so massage, reflexology, acupuncture, shiatsu, all types of touch that, again, they relieve the trauma from the body. The body is stored with it, the trauma is stored within the body. So even if your mind tells you that you're not experiencing a traumatic response, you are, and the body does keep the score. So that's why there's an emphasis on relieving the trauma like this. We have sound healing sessions, and I don't know if you ever seen it or ever experienced a sound bath, but through different frequencies that meet the liquids and the frequencies in the body of the person who's laying down, you can again relieve the trauma from the body. Other modalities include homeopathy and herbs. Some of the symptoms would be, I can't sleep, I can't concentrate, I can't eat, I have nausea from the smells that I encountered in battle or as a responder. So a lot of oils and herbs are very helpful in that, and we prescribe it to people that come and give a one-on-one matching. Classes of mindfulness, classes of transitions, right? Sometimes you need to transition from reserve duty to going back to work or to going back to your family. These are some of the workshops that we do. We use a lot of art and working with natural materials, because again, when you're crafting, when you're using your hands and when you're using your sentence, it's very somatic and it relieves the trauma from your body. All of this is handled with therapists that come from social work, psychology, or psychiatry. They lead the groups through the entire day of workshops. So a typical group will go through 6 or 7 different modalities in one day. The idea of this is because healing is so different from person to person, and because people experience the symptoms differently, they meet, or I guess those modalities meet them differently, and each person can receive a different toolbox from coming to Healing Space. That's the idea behind it. I'll just give a small example. You'll also see her in the video in just a moment, but Roni came to us on October 7th. She lost her best friend at the Nova Festival, and she started as as someone who needs help, as someone who's receiving therapy, but she's still with us today because she became part of our team, part of our staff. She was an art therapist, and she does also animal therapy and other things. So she's an example of dozens of examples of people who came to heal, but stayed as staff at Healing Space and are helping heal others with their skills. So I want to show you, is that okay that I'll put the video on, or do you want to put some questions before?
No, why don't you go ahead, put the video on?
Okay.
כשהכל התחיל, אני הייתי ברחבה לבד. הייתי באמצע ריקוד עם עצמי, ואני זוכרת שראיתי את הזריחה, ופתאום ראיתי זיקוקים, אמרתי, מה הקשר? אבל איזה יופי. כאילו, המוזיקה מפסיקה. שומעת את הסירנות, מתחילים לצעוק צבע אדום, צבע אדום.
ממש מול העיניים שלי יש פיצוץ מטורף. ופה אני מבין שאנחנו בעצם בהתקלות. אני מבין שחסר לי 5 אנשים. שמסביבנו פזורות אלפי חתיכות של הגופות.
אם יש איזשהו מתח בגוף, אם אתם מרגישים איזשהו קיבוץ איפשהו, תנשמו לאזור הזה, תרפות.
נוי, מחברת ילדות היחידה שלי, הייתה במסיבה ולא חזרה משם. ניסיתי להשיג את נוי באטרף, ולחברים, עם מישהו במקרה איתה, וזה כבר היה מאוחר מדי. כך כמה רגעים, למצוא את הישיבה שנוחה לנו, אולי לעצום את העיניים, אולי להישאר עם עיניים פקוחות, כשהמבט ממוקד. אני אחרי כאילו כל השבועות של הבשורות וההלוויות, הרגשתי שאני חייבת עזרה, אני חייבת כאילו שנייה מקום של שקט, כי כאילו פנימי הלך לי השקט.
ממש במזל אני פוגש את המקום הזה. הצוות מגיע לפה, בעצם כל האנשים שחוו את אותו אירוע, אנחנו מגיעים לפה וחווים פה משהו שלא היית רגיל אליו תקופה של כמעט 5.5 חודשים. הרבה קשב. אני מכיר את האנשים שלי ממש ממש טוב. בחיים שלי לא ראיתי אותם ככה.
אתה בעצמך יצירת. בהתחלה נורא 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 כעסתי. כעסתי בטירוף על זה שקורים לי פה דברים כל כך טובים. איך זה שלי קורים דברים כל כך טובים בעקבות זה שנוי נרצחה. זה בלתי נסבל. עצם המחשבה הזאת היא בלתי נסבלת. זה פשוט הזוי. והיום אני באמת עושה... אני מאוד מאוד מאמינה בזה, למרות שזה... אני גם מאמינה בזה, וזה גם בלתי נתפס מבחינתי. שאני באמת מרגישה את הדברים האלה עכשיו בזכותה.
רגעים של זעזוע ומשבר הם גם רגעים של הזדמנות מדהימה, כשמשהו מתפרק אפשר ביחד לבנות אותו מחדש, ויש לנו הזדמנות, יש לנו הזדמנות אמיתית, היסטורית, הולכת כחברה, כקהילה, להסתכל ביחד ולנסות לבנות עתיד טוב יותר.
ועם בני עמי ועם ארצי, ועם כל העולם והאדם אשר בראת. בעלת חרש חרש, אתה תופפות, עתידות לקראתנו, ואת מחייכת מתוך השינה. יהיה לנו טוב, טוב מטוב, טוב מאוד, זה מתחיל כבר בבוקר, ואת מחייכת אליי מתוך השינה. יהיה לנו טוב, טוב מטוב, טוב מאוד, זה מתחיל כבר בבוקר, ואת צוחקת אליי מתוך השינה.
Okay. So it's hard
Ilana,
to...
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
That was very, very moving. So given the community and continuing nature of the PTSD, where even one person's trauma in this kind of community can trigger other people, beside other events, is this a place of learning coping skills that one will have to use during life as opposed to a cure kind of approach?
Such a good question. I can move to a few more slides and then like stop sharing, but I'll just say that in the beginning of the war, it was like an ER, okay? We were treating people with the symptoms that they were presenting at the time that we met them. Like I said, people were not talking, were not moving limbs, were not sleeping, were not eating. today we're looking at people who will have to carry a toolbox into the rest of their lives. So we're definitely teaching them what they can do for themselves. So we're illuminating the ways of healing that are within themselves. I mean, I think in general, the idea behind therapy, no therapist can cure you, right? If you don't want or if you don't take charge of your own healing process, but you do need the tools and you do need to be exposed to different modalities and to different ways of doing things. A lot of the populations who came to Healing Space have never seen or experienced any of those modalities. So it was new to them. So just by exposing them, giving them words to explain what they feel and what they can do for themselves, it's already a huge help. So to your question, we're definitely at that second stage now in 2025. I guess I want to jump into kind of what helps us and say that we are a nonprofit. Healing Space is a nonprofit. And I'll say that the way it works in Israel is that we fund most of the therapy that happens at Healing Space. We fund using donations. We're fundraising in the US and in Israel. We're also creating agreements with the government in terms of certain populations that some of the government offices will cover or subsidize some of the costs. But we're definitely moving along this whole year thanks to the very generous help of our donors, federations, foundations, synagogues, private donors, and so on. So I wanted to share a little bit what donations do or what type of budget we work with, if that makes sense. Okay. So in terms of providing trauma healing per day, every 1 day retreat includes everything, 6 or 7 modalities, and usually 2 meals. And so we have multiplications here for whether it is one soldier as a reserve soldier in a reserve soldier unit, or it could be a family, a bereaved family, or it could be a group of individuals that have survived the Nova. It could be, various populations that come to Healing Space. So that's one way of looking at our budget in terms of what activity or what healing we're doing. Another way of looking at our budget is to see our physical needs, the way that we build and expand. So we're all the time expanding Healing Space in order to see more groups, in order to accommodate more needs. So every expansion has those costs that I'm showing here on the presentation, whether it is to build another yurt. I didn't say this, but we are treating people in yurts and tents. We're not treating people in walls or buildings or rooms. As I said, nature is part of the treatment because nature is ever going, ever growing. It creates the hope of continuation. So it's very important that we do it like that. So there's a fire pit and there's a pathway, there's a food truck that feeds the people. And these are the costs that we're providing in terms of when we fundraise. In the upcoming year, we want to be able to expand into the ability to allow for a 24-hour stay because our retreats are today they are day long because we're unable to have people stay. We don't have enough yurts or beds or furniture or space. So expansion is important so that we could heal people with an overnight stay as well. We are also researching and taking all the data in and analyzing it because we're realizing that we are writing the book about trauma for generations to come. So these are our plans for the next year. And happy to answer any questions.
Great. So if you would stop screen sharing, or Jody would stop that part, then we can go to full screen and I can see who is on with us. Okay, so one question that came up is how do people get referred to Healing Space or find you for help?
It's a great question. So currently we're working with organizations. So we'll be working with hospitals, right? Like Soroka, Bellinson, Tel HaShomer, Ichilov. will talk to their resilience department, and they will refer the physicians who need to come to us. The same with the police forces. They have a resilience team who refer people to us. The same with Army units, the reserve duty soldiers, their heads of units will refer people to us. In terms of bereaved families and also festival survivors, these are people who have known about us since October 7th, and it is the same recurrent people who have been coming every week. It has been the oxygen that they receive once a week into their lives, into their very hard, traumatic lives. So these are the two types of how to get to us.
All right. I've mentioned to you that we have had our own initiative with Kibbutz Kisufim to support them. People came to visit us, which has been an intense experience. And I know that the leader of our effort, who I've been working with, David Graham, although Rabbi London certainly has been a leader too, and I don't see her on the screen. David, how does this track with you in terms of what we've learned from the kibbutz members?
So I think it's completely consistent. I mean, I think one of the really interesting things.
Can you be a little louder? I'm having trouble.
I think one of the really interesting things that was said, and I'm probably going to get the terminology wrong, but the notion of vicarious trauma. The people from Kisufim have experienced on the ground trauma, but what you described as the vicarious trauma is also, very much my perception as to what is going on a broader basis. But clearly, what we heard from the folks at Kisufim, who are also in the category of, they're saying both simultaneously that they're all right, as you said. People do say in these circumstances, but there are obviously going to be long-term and ineradicable lingering effects.
I notice you're nodding yes, Ilana.
Yeah, no, I mean, vicarious trauma was new to me as well. I think we don't realize, but when the trauma is a collective trauma, when almost what is it, like 1 out of 10 Israelis is a responder in one way or another, and it touches them, and it's all the time on the news, and you walk the streets and it's around you, and you can't escape it, then yes, you develop this new type that's called vicarious trauma. Even if you weren't a witness directly to what happened, and even if you weren't in your home when people were slaughtered around you. So it's definitely the phenomena that we're dealing with this whole year.
Yeah. We had 2 IDF soldiers come and speak to us, one an F-15 pilot, and the other one from the Combat Search and Rescue Unit 669. And I talked to them a little outside of their presentation. And having grown up during the Vietnam War and been trained in combat infantry there, one of the things that struck me, and I don't know if this is a more general thing, is at least with the reservists and some of the others, the acceptance of the idea that I can be a strong soldier and have to acknowledge that I'm in trauma and need to deal with it, which is quite different than, happens, I think, in lots of places.
I think what we can throw in the mix is Israeliness. I think there's a toughness to Israelis in general. And we had a lot of parents bring their sons and daughters who are serving in reserve duty in this war, saying, 50 years ago in the Yom Kippur War, we didn't talk about trauma. Just now, 50 years after, we're revealing this term and the fact that it relates to us. We weren't allowed to talk about it. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a term. It wasn't something you deal with. It's something you move on from. And so this Israeli ethos of everyone goes to the army, everyone fights, there's always wars, you're always kind of like in this tension, so you're not allowed to talk about this pain or about those symptoms. And I think for the first time in the history of Israel, we are talking about it and talking about healing. You'll open legislation and budgeting in governmental offices, and you'll see the word trauma and you'll see the word healing. And it is for the first time. It has never happened before. It was not part of our dictionary.
So you mentioned the shortage of therapists, which I heard about as we started to work with the kibbutz, because I talked to Natal and I talked to a therapist who was working with another kibbutz about the shortage of therapists. Is there movement to increase the number of therapists significantly to deal with the issues that still are occurring?
Theoretically, I think we're missing about 3,000 or 4,000 psychiatrists, and if we're talking about per capita, and med school plus the practice and so on, we're talking about 15 years of when this will happen, if it will happen, and so on. So that's a hard thing to overcome so quickly. And so again, the idea at Healing Space came from the ground up. It didn't come from the top. It's not that the legislation or the government said you need to open it up to more modalities. It just happened that other modalities that are more holistic and not conventional rose up to the occasion and gave such help in this traumatic time. And I'll say also that there's the 80-20 kind of like ratio, right? Only 20% of people need chronic, more intense care that maybe psychiatrists can give, but 80% of the people, it's enough for them to go through different non-conventional modalities and to move on with their lives with the toolbox. So if you look at it like that, we should see the masses with as many modalities as possible and leave just the severe cases to psychiatrists, because it's such a scarce thing that we have.
All right. So from my wife, Barbara, a question. Can you share more about the research you are doing and how you plan to share what is found?
We're not yet doing research. We're planning to do research. We're dealing with doing the work, but now we're starting to collaborate with universities and with high-tech companies to create a way to write this into something comprehensive that we can teach in the world. So we already have groups and delegations from around the world that come to learn what protocol we're using, what's working, what's not, how it's working in nature, but nothing is written as a research or as something to tell the world. It will be this year.
I think that we live in a world where many areas, including the United States, can use what you're learning and what you've developed. So I hope that you're able to do that and widely share it with colleagues around the world, because while this is a unique and unprecedented traumatic experience in many ways, the idea of community trauma clearly is not unique in the world that we live in, unfortunately. All right. I don't see anything else in the chat itself. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us, Ilana? I mean, this has been really illuminating and quite moving and very impressive, very, very impressive. Is there anything else that we should take away from this session?
Yeah, so I want to say just a few things. Again, like, because we have this center, things happen that we didn't even plan. So this past week, the friends of Romi Gonen, who came back from Gaza, asked to come. They called in the morning. They said, we want to come in the evening. We want to heal ourselves from this past year that we were working towards this goal of bringing our friend home, and now she's home. And we need you, right? So they arrived, they came, 20 friends. They had the day at Healing Space. We're opening it up to all of the people who are in need, friends of people who are coming from captivities, families of, and so on. We're talking about, this is like a new population. These are not responders. These are kind of like, more traumatic circles. So that's happening right now. We're very excited about that, because when you develop a center and when you develop experience, then more and more populations come and we're able to help more people. And that's very, very exciting. We also had some visitors from Ukraine saying that, you know, there's still war in Ukraine, even though the world have forgotten about it. I think the world can only see one crisis at a time. So I think on October 7th, people thought that the Ukraine war has ended, and it hasn't. And they came to learn about how we deal with trauma, because they haven't even begun to be in that step. I think the language in Ukraine doesn't even have those words or terms, funny enough. But for them to be able to deal with this, they're going to do kind of like small pilots, so they came to learn. So that's another kind of like exciting thing that happens. We reached out to Los Angeles community, who have been very close with us for the past year. We had a lot of donors, foundations, and families that have donated to Healing Space for the past year. So the first thing we did when we heard about the fire is to say, how can we help you? We learned a lot about treating trauma and collective trauma, and we know what you're experiencing. We want to come and help. So there's a dialogue around that. And a lot of our therapists are sending short videos and other resources to the community in Los Angeles of what to do to kind of like regain resilience at this time. So that's very exciting. The second thing that I want to say is that we do need donations. We need donations all the time. We need resources to keep doing the good work that we're doing. Our government is slow. So even if the money is coming from the government, it comes too late and too little. And we're not able to continue like this. So for us to not close next year, or for us to not have to choose between populations and who to treat, and when friends of Romi call to say yes, we need donations, we need your help, we need money, we need resources. So that's the second thing I want to say. The third thing that I want to say is, when you come to Israel, please come and receive a private tour at Healing Space and see with your own eyes what we're doing and what it looks like and what it feels like in nature. And you're a personal guest of mine when you come, so just reach out, be in touch.
Yeah. Well, and I'd be glad to share the contact information, and Jody has it as well. I will mention that in about 10 days or so, I'm going to send out a recorded program by Ben-Gurion University about the difficulties of university life there since October 7th, which is a reflection of the community trauma that students, faculty, and staff have been experiencing, as well as the political tensions that they've been experiencing. So, what Healing Space is doing, it just reinforces all that Ilana has been telling us about the need for services, and what they've tried to do as a university setting, not in a therapy sense so much, but simply as a supportive sense, is another part of a different kind of story, but a related story as well. So I don't see anything else in the chat. I know that in Israel, it's not real late, but it's not early either. And Ilana, we really appreciate your taking the time to be with us to do this. As I said to you, we've got it recorded, and I know there are a number of people who want to see it, that we will be sending it out to, as well as making it available to the whole congregation. So our sincere thanks to you for coming on with us. And I want to thank Natalie Cantor-Young for making me aware of Healing Space based on her tour there, and for her wonderful introduction. So thank you, everybody, and good night, good morning, whatever time it is now. Good morning. Thanks, Ilana, so much.
Have a wonderful week. May we hear so much good news this week, and so many people coming back home. Be with us. That would be great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you.